What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the IS300 build series. It is the continuation of a radiator swap. In the last video we ended needing a new radiator, and in today's video we're starting with a freshie. Let's go. The radiator is finally installed. Now it is a dead nuts replica, except for the fact that I did not cut this little lip off. It's obviously not needed for this application. It's completely useless, but I just didn't want to deal with it. You got to cut it with an angle grinder and then flat disc it and then DA sand it to make it look like it wasn't there. It takes a lot of time, and I just wanted to have it over with. It took me a whole day to do it. So whatever, I'm sorry it doesn't look as good, but it's close. All right, so we got this thing bled. I think we're ready for the maiden voyage driving this thing down the road. However, I want to put the fenders on it and align the hood and put the hood studs in it, because obviously we can't drive it without the hood being latched. So we'll get all that stuff wrapped up, but in preparation for the first drive, I want to swap the wheels out with the Varstones that are now on the Mighty Max, which is over there. This thing's been sitting over in my house garage for months, and oh, it looks rough. I think I parked it outside right before spring, or right as spring was coming. You can see these damn cats have been walking on my hood, and underneath it is just, oh, it's kind of sad. Nothing better than titanium covered in pollen, right? Ugh, at least we know it'll clean up good. And this thing's about to get completely revamped in a different video. So just want to touch on that. We're gonna pull all these different wheels apart, move them around. And before too long, we should be able to get our first drive in the IS300. It's about 2 days later. We got our fenders on, we got our headlights on, we got bolts and everything. We got our wheels on. It looks significantly better. And if you just don't look at the hood and how bad the quality of the paint is throughout the car, it looks pretty sick. But we're making progress, we're getting there. And the next thing on the list is to secure the hood. So if you don't remember, we lost our hood latch when we did our tuck condenser with this new radiator combo, because there just wasn't enough space for both. Now these latches here are nice, they're Cerakoted black, and these are rated for holding a hood down. There's a lot on Amazon you gotta be careful with. They're rip-offs of the Quick Latch brand. I believe Quick Latch was the OG. These are gonna sit like this. Roughly something like that. I don't think it'll look bad. Obviously they'll be flush, so it should look pretty good. All right, we got our studs in place, and this is where I opted to put them. There were already holes here, and the best part about this is that I know that they're symmetrical because I used factory spec holes that were obviously evenly placed. Bam, they're done. They look sick. They have a nice positive click. Sometimes hard to do one-handed. There we go. And down. Boom. Hell yeah. With the hood studs complete, the last thing on the list is a coolant overflow. Now I went ahead and built one off camera because it's just a lot of cutting and grinding. And you can't really see the big picture until we're done anyway. So this is it right here. Welded the tab onto the bottom right there, and then another tab on the side here. It's all aluminum, it's pretty thick stuff, welded pretty easily for the most part. I think it came out pretty nice. Then I hit it with my trusty bed liner fake powder coat. Came out pretty good. So we got our cap on and left it gloss black. We have a factory stud right there that sticks up. And then there's a single threaded hole down here on the side of the frame rail. We're gonna use that for this lower mount right here. And basically, she just drops right in. Now, I did do a few things off camera. Most notably, threw a set of billet valve covers on here. I hated the old covers because those fittings just didn't come out right. I didn't foresee the holes being drilled so off. The fittings, instead of coming out like this, they were coming out kind of like this, and it looked ridiculous. So I picked up these covers. They came from China. They were 550 bucks. I really can't complain. The machine work on them is really nice. There are a few weird things about them, but overall, pretty stoked. I had to clearance this a little bit, which I did not with the stock covers, so that's something to note, but it wasn't bad. Just a little bit of grinding on this side here and a little over here. And then we also added the catch can. So this is a Vibrant Universal can. It's one of the bigger ones that they have, and it's really nice. I think it looks clean. They include a bracket like this. I just bent it 90 degrees. It sits perfectly in place here. It does not hit the hood or my added hood struts that went on recently. The lines are nice and parallel to the valve covers. I think it came out really clean. I'm gonna add some of those 10AN clamps to hold these lines parallel with each other, and I think we'll be good to go. Another cool thing about this can is they include a dipstick. So instead of pulling the can to check the level, just pull the dipstick out and take a look. This thing has stock ring clearances in it, so I don't really foresee it filling up often. But in the event that it might have filled up quicker than expected, I can always just check my dipstick for peace of mind. With the catch can finally wrapped up, the valve cover is done, all of this shit seemingly pretty much sorted. I need to work on the AC lines and the electric power steering. Now the AC lines are gonna be pretty straightforward. I got all my fittings set up. We're gonna basically come out of the stock evaporator there, go down to the compressor, come out of the compressor, go to the top of the condenser, out of the condenser, into a pressure fitting, and then back into the evaporator. Now I know that sounds pretty obvious. That's how the factory AC setup is. And I'm gonna break it down a little bit more, but I'm gonna do that in a separate video so that people that have swaps on different cars or whatever, JZ swaps, LS swaps, whatever it is, give them an idea about how to build custom AC lines. With that, I have all my fittings laid out. So we got our stock hoses where I cut the factory fittings off of. So we got our evaporator fitting here. We got one right here. And we have some weld fittings that go on the end. So these are reduced barrier fittings. Weld them right on that. Obviously they need to be prepped. And then it allows you to basically turn your factory stuff into a more universal design. And you connect the dots with these hoses that we have here in various sizes. So like I said, I'm gonna get into that in another video, but I will pick back up in this video when the AC is done and being charged. So for you guys, it'll be about 2 seconds, BRB. And bam, here we are. Moments later, we have an entire AC line set up, fully completed. It came out really nice. It took me about a day. Went ahead and did the lines all black. And I use reduced barrier hose for everything, so it's a lot smaller in size than a standard barrier. We run down here, we go to our compressor. We got a low side charge port there at the compressor inlet. And then on the outlet of the compressor, we got a high side port. We come over here to our condenser, and then out of the condenser into our pressure switch. It's an OEM pressure switch with a modified housing. It mounts to the driver's side frame rail, and then goes right back up to our evaporator. Came out really clean, I'm really happy with it. I'm vacuuming it down now. We're gonna spend about 30 more minutes or so, roughly 45 minutes total, vacuuming it down. And then we're gonna tighten those valves and make sure the system stays sealed up, no leaks. And then I can go into the ECU software, figure out how to turn on the compressor, and we can get this thing charged up. Now we thought we were done. I thought it was all over, but God has come down himself and dropped his transmission in my lap, and I have no choice but to pick it up. It's like I was saying, this is the last thing I expected to do, but it was a good deal. It was handed to me. God reached down to me and he put this transmission in my hands, and I had to accept. So at first glance, this thing is much, much cleaner than our GTE car. Now, it does have a front mount, it does have a turbo kit. We'll get to that. Needs some headlights buffed. It's got some newer gunmetal IS300 wheels, look pretty sick. The paint is really, really clean. It's got 30% ceramic tint all around. Tires are pretty good. Got a little exhaust on it. The quarter panels aren't dented and all that like mine. It's got the suede seats and then the suede inserts on our door panels. It does have a very clean dash. It is immaculate. It's got the gauge pot up there. There's no damage, there's no stickiness, there's none of that. I think the O1s didn't suffer from that, so that's really cool. It is manual, as you can see. We're gonna leave God's Trans for a second. Check out the back seat. Full interior, everything is here. It's really nice to see what they look like with all the stock stuff in place. Again, back seat is super clean. Looks like it was never really used. This car does have, I think, 220K on it, so it's definitely not new by any means. Let's talk about the good shit. This car's got a brand new T56 Magnum swap in it from Grannas Racing. It's the entire kit. It's got the, unfortunately not the twin disc, it's got the McLeod 6-puck, 650 horsepower rated single disc in it. It's got the cast aluminum bell housing. It's got the index plate in the trunk, although he already did all that. The thing is really sick. The trans shifts insanely good. It feels really smooth, and it's still in the break-in period. Like I said, 200 miles. This is as close as we're gonna get to a brand new trans without actually buying one. Now let's go ahead and move to the engine bay. Now under the hood, it doesn't look anything like mine, and that's okay. But it is turbo, as you saw from the intercooler. CX Racing turbo kit. An AEM Infinity 506, a boom slang harness, and it was tuned on National Speeds dyno. It made 350 horsepower. He's got a bunch of sensors here. It's pretty cool. It's got injector dynamics 1050s in it, and Megan coilovers. I do have the front bumper over here in the back of my truck. If you look up grannasracing.com, this transmission is $8,500 before you ship it, and that's like another $500. So basically we're looking at a $9,000 transmission combo, and it will be perfect in this beautiful piece of shit right here. So the plan as of right now, because this car is so clean and it does run, is to dial it in, fix whatever little issues it has, take the AR5 out of that, put that in here, and then post this car up for sale and get it down the road. People might be thinking, hey, you should just swap the GTE and everything in that engine bay to this car. And I thought about that because it's got the better interior, it already has the trans, blah, blah, blah. However, it's easier for me to prep and paint that car and put my trans in it than it is to take this car and mod the lower radius support for the tucked radiator and completely tuck everything in the bay and move all my wiring harnesses that are tucked over to this car and then rewire all my speakers and all that shit. I just don't think it's worth it. That car does have lower miles as well, so once I fix all the shit with the body, it'll look comparable if not better. So that's the reasoning for not doing that. Plus, not to mention, if I want to sell a car fast to kind of like recoup my losses, I can put my AR5 in this and sell it pretty quickly. It's a very nice car, whereas that one has shit paint and no one's gonna want to buy it. So I'm gonna pull that car in and pull the AR5 out, and the reason being is that I want to get this car together as soon as possible so that it can go up for sale to offset the cost of doing this swap-a-rooney here. I've got IS300 number 1 up in the air. I'm about to pull out the AR5. I'm not gonna film this, but I will pick up when I'm ready to put the T56 in it. It's gonna be a little bit for me. I gotta get this one out of the way once the trans is out, and then get the white car in here, get that trans out, get this one fully installed, and then figure out how to make the wiring harness stuff work, because this car does have the tweaked harness, which was spec'd for the AR5, whereas the other car will not have that. So I'll have to figure out how to make the speed sensor work and all that good stuff. I'll pick back up when we're ready to put the T56 in, and I'll see you guys in a moment. Quick impromptu clip of the AR5 being removed. These motor mounts are sick in a sense that they work well. I think these are the excessive mounts that came with the car, but they're so stiff that even with the makeshift jack over here, I don't have 2 trans jacks, so I tried to use my engine hoist with a block of wood to push the front of the motor up so that I could get this thing off. I wasn't able to do it. I wasn't able to move it or anything. Nothing happened. It just basically lifted the entire car off the front pads and freaked me out. So the trans tunnel needs to be clearance for sure for the T56, because what I ended up having to do just to get the AR5 out, as you can see, it's been clearanced before. Again, this is all previous owner stuff, which I don't care, you don't see this anyway. But I couldn't get the bell housing to clear because the starter area here was hitting. So as you can see, I left the clutch on and I just went to the inspection cover and pulled each pressure plate bolt individually. Now I tried to switch sides and rotate the motor and do it as evenly as I could, but there's still not a great way to do it because you don't have even tension on the bolts, and thus you like got the pressure plate all kind of sideways. But whatever, it should be fine. And I'm gonna pull that off there in a little bit. For now, I'm gonna pull this flywheel out, get this car out of the way, get the other car in, get the Magnum out, and that's where I'll pick back up with you guys here in a few. Here we are, Lexus number 2 is on the lift. Everything's here, it's got the sick cast aluminum bell housing, which I like for street stuff because you have less harmonics. With the aluminum versus steel, maybe not as strong, but for what we're doing, it's fine. It's got the tilt and throw out bearing, got the billet output flange for the, I think it's like a 4130 yoke. Adapter from the 26 spline out or something like that. Similar to what I have on my Mighty Max, and then aluminum dry shaft. I think that's 4-inch, yeah, all the way back, so shouldn't have a problem there. You got both transmissions out and get a little visual comparison here. And to be honest, the T56 looks a little bit smaller than the AR5, or at least sleeker, you know, from the top. Take a look at that one there. Cool, we're making some progress. 2 trannies in 1 day is not super fun, but you know, halfway-ish there, I suppose. All right, guys, we're jumping ahead. The white car got pushed outside with no trans in it. It was ready to go in, but I had to hurry up and index this bell housing because Joel at Grannas, talked to him a little bit back and forth just via email, and he was willing to get me a twin disc out same day, and I'm stoked for that, but I had to measure this real quick to make sure we didn't have too much run out. So I didn't get to film showing this, although I do have my tripod here because I was putting my phone in here so I could see what the run out was while I turned the engine over. Basically, you bolt this plate up, and then you set your dial indicator here at 0, and you rotate the engine, and it runs along this line, and then it'll tell you how much variance left or right, up and down that you have, and then you can order offset dowels accordingly. Now the dowels are the things that go in right here, but they're the ones on the other side, so they'd be the ones where the bell housing meets the block, and you pull them out and you pop in the new ones, and they allow you to basically adjust your fitment. Now I'm gonna push this thing back out of the shop, get that car inside. The hill is kind of insane, and it's not that steep, but when you're pushing a heavy car by yourself, it's impossible. So what I did is I rigged up this winch here with 2 straps hooked into my lift post, and then I run this thing out and I pull it in. All right, guys, it is 2 days later. We're picking back up with this same gray IS300 on the lift, but the white car was back on here. I got it finished. The AR5 swap is completely done. She's outside, she works perfectly. Couldn't have worked out better, knock on wood. I hope things continue to go that way. So I went ahead and rechecked the run out again just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. The clutch and everything showed up today, so let's check that stuff out. Now it's only fitting to use God's clutch in conjunction with God's transmission. And this is it. This is by far the sickest 2JZ clutch on the market. It's the Tilton ST246, for those of you who can't read this. It's so dope. So Grannas Racing sells these specifically for the JZ. I believe it's exclusively through them only as far as you know, where you can get it. And he gives you everything. So I had to change the master cylinder. I had to get some new flywheel bolts that are shorter for this specific flywheel that we're using. And then he also tossed in this billet alignment tool, which is really nice. And I'll be able to use this for other projects too, because I do have the same spec input shaft for my other truck as well. You know, I just hit him up and I was like, look, this is what's in the car. Here's the invoice number from the previous owner. Can you tell me what I need to upgrade to the twin disc versus the single disc that's in it now? He sent me back a list. We got it ordered. It took 2 days to get it from Florida. He got it done almost right away, shipped out same day, and I couldn't be happier with the time frame. So we got some new flywheel bolts here as well, or pressure plate bolts rather. We got the flywheel bolts. I already showed you those. We have a boot to basically fit over the T56 shifter, and then we'll have to adapt everything else. It's gonna be a little bit of work, but given that the floor's been cut in this car already, I didn't want to mess with ordering the ones he offered because I don't think they'll fit exactly. But with that being said, we're going to take the belt housing back off, get it out of the way, and install our flywheel, get all of our bolts torqued. And you know, I'm not gonna show you that, we're just gonna get it installed. I'll show it to you once it's all in place. And the coolest thing about the T56 in this car is that you can install the belt housing first like this. So obviously this index plate will come off, but the belt housing will stay on. You can fully install it, get everything in place, which makes it way easier to clear. As you can see, we have some clearance that's gonna have to happen with a hammer. And then the trans can bolt up after the fact. Whereas with the AR5 or an R154, because the belt housing bolts on the inside, you don't have that luxury. You have to make everything work and fit at one time, so you can come up and then stab it through the clutch and everything into that, that pilot bearing there. So pretty nice, really cool. I'm excited for it. Let's get it going. All right guys, we're picking back up. The trans is installed. Clutch seems good. We bled it last night. Air gap seems to be correct. You know, everything looks good. Let's fire this thing up, see how it does. I'm excited to see how this thing feels. All right, we got a little bit of heat in this thing, and I'm just gonna talk about the driving characteristics. Let's talk about this trans. So it feels almost like a gated transmission without the physical, you know, the gate. It very much like locks into each gear, but it doesn't feel bad. It's really, really nice. The only thing we haven't done is the reverse lockout, which reverses over here to the right. It's a little bit harder to do because I haven't wired up the lockout. I'm gonna try my best to let you hear me over all this road noise. Clutch is amazing. The Tilton Twin is obviously, like I said, more expensive than the other 6-puck, but so far it's totally worth it. I mean, sometimes the budget just doesn't allow for that. Completely understand, but if you guys got it and you're looking at a clutch for a similar scenario for a JZ T56, I gotta say it's so dope. It's just really, really good. It's really docile. You don't have to rev the shit out of the car to get it moving. That's about all I can really show you guys. The noise is kind of crazy. Hopefully you can hear some of this. But we're gonna head back to the shop, swap out the intercooler for a newer treadstone unit that's a much bigger core, or higher efficiency core actually, with a thinner physical size. All right, we're back in the shop and the intercooler swap must commence. So like I said before, this is a 4-inch core. It's definitely an eBay generic something, and it probably would have done fine, but we can't fit a front bumper, and I do worry that it would heat soak once we got on the dyno, because that's what the eBay intercoolers are known for doing. Now this one is so much bigger than what I need, there's a chance it still wouldn't heat soak enough to make a difference, but it wasn't expensive to buy this one. I paid $230 shipped for this thing to me. It's got like a year worth of install or use time on it, and the guy made 900 plus with this thing. It is slightly narrower than the core that's on the car, but I measured it and the width is exactly the same, so we should be chilling with our charge pipe location, which is why I bought this one. Got the new intercooler in place. It sits pretty level straight off the bat. As you can see, if you line it up with the condenser tubes there, it looks pretty good. We're sitting here mid-progress. It's taking me a little longer than expected. It's kind of difficult just to make sure everything's center and square and all that. I've never mounted an intercooler with charge pipes that were pre-existing, so it's a little bit lazy feeling, but also more work in my opinion. So. All right, it's fully welded out. It did not come out amazing, as you can see. It's okay, but I've done much better. Clearly Treadstone did better when they ordered these tanks on, but that's all right. We got it all mounted up here. Now, admittedly, this clip is about a month after that last one. For some reason, I never finished a closing shot, but here we are. It's mounted, it's tested, it's tried and true, and it works really well. Now, although we don't have a bumper on in this shot, the bumper does wrap around the bottom of the intercooler quite nicely, and it does clear up top. The IS300s have very little clearance up here. That's why you'll see a lot of intercoolers that are like modified and come up with a shallower top of the core just to clear the bumper and the grill. And we can clear our bumper, it does fit. Now the grill's gonna take some modification, but that is something we're gonna do at a later time. And that's all I have for now. Thank you guys. See ya.